Marcus Williams had been cleaning MIT's mathematics building for 7 years. Every night, the same routine. Empty trash, mop floors, wipe blackboards clean. Until the night he saw an equation that stopped him in his tracks. What he wrote on that board would shock the entire academic world and change his life forever. Because sometimes genius hides in the most unexpected places. The mathematics department at MIT never truly slept. Even at 2 a.m., the hallways hummed with the echo of brilliance. Equations scrawled on whiteboards, empty coffee cups marking late-night breakthroughs, and the quiet shuffle of someone still working. Marcus Williams was part of that quiet rhythm. At 34, he'd been the night janitor for 7 years, arriving at 10 p.m. when the last professors finally went home and leaving at 6 a.m. before the first classes began. He was invisible in the way that service workers often are, essential but unnoticed. Professor Chen often joked that Marcus was the only person who saw more of the math building than the faculty. He knows every equation we've ever written, Chen would say, not knowing how prophetic those words were. Marcus had a routine that never varied. Start with the offices, empty the trash, vacuum the floors, then the classrooms, wipe the boards, straighten the chairs, sweep away the chalk dust of another day's discoveries. Finally, the research wing, where the real magic happened. It was a Tuesday night in October when Marcus entered Professor Harrison's research classroom. Harrison was MIT's most celebrated mathematician, known for his work on unsolved theorems that had puzzled academics for decades. On the main blackboard, written in Harrison's precise handwriting, was an equation unlike anything Marcus had seen before. It sprawled across the entire board, complex, elegant, and somehow beautiful in its incompleteness. Above it, Harrison had written, "The Goldbach Variation, unsolved for 47 years, $50,000 prize for solution, office hours canceled until breakthrough." Marcus had seen thousands of equations in his 7 years of cleaning these rooms. Usually, he'd erase them without a second thought, yesterday's work making way for tomorrow's attempts. But this one was different. Something about its structure called to him. He found himself studying it, not with the casual glance of a janitor, but with the focused attention of someone who understood what he was looking at. Because Marcus had a secret that none of them knew. Marcus Williams had never told anyone at MIT that he'd been a mathematics prodigy, that he'd earned a full scholarship to Princeton at 16, that he'd been working on his doctorate in theoretical mathematics, when his father's sudden death forced him to drop out and support his younger siblings. That was 12 years ago. 12 years of taking whatever jobs he could find to keep food on the table and his sister in college. 12 years of watching his mathematical mind grow rusty from disuse. But rust, he discovered that night, wasn't the same as forgetting. Standing in front of Harrison's impossible equation, Marcus felt something awaken in his mind. Patterns that had been dormant began to stir. The elegant logic of advanced mathematics came flooding back like muscle memory. He looked around the empty classroom. Everyone was gone. The building was silent, except for the hum of fluorescent lights, and Marcus began to think. The Goldbach Variation wasn't just difficult, it was legendary. Mathematicians had been trying to solve it since 1976. It dealt with prime number theory in ways that pushed the boundaries of human understanding. Harrison himself had been working on it for 8 years, but as Marcus studied the equation, he saw something others had missed, a pathway that appeared when you approached the problem from a different angle. Marcus found a piece of chalk and began to write. Not on Harrison's board. He would never presume to alter a professor's work. Instead, he used the smaller board beside it, the one usually reserved for student questions. His hand moved across the board with increasing confidence. The years fell away as he worked through complex transformations, his mind operating at a level he hadn't accessed in over a decade. Each step built on the last, creating a logical progression toward what seemed impossible. 3 hours later, Marcus stepped back and looked at what he'd written. His heart was pounding. Unless he'd made a catastrophic error and he'd checked his work 5 times, he had just solved the Goldbach Variation. The solution was elegant in its simplicity, using a novel approach that combined prime number theory with advanced topology. It was the kind of breakthrough that careers were built on, that earned Nobel Prizes and endowed chairs. And it had been solved by a janitor at 3:17 a.m. on a Tuesday. Marcus cleaned up his chalk dust, finished his rounds, and went home. He didn't sleep. He couldn't. He had just accomplished something that the greatest mathematical minds of his generation had failed to do. But who would believe him? Professor Harrison arrived at his classroom the next morning at 7 a.m., carrying coffee and the weight of another sleepless night spent wrestling with his impossible equation. He'd been so close to a breakthrough he could feel it. He stopped in the doorway. Someone had written on his auxiliary board. At first he was annoyed. Students weren't supposed to use faculty research spaces. But as his eyes moved across the mathematical notation, annoyance transformed into confusion, then amazement, then disbelief. Someone had solved the Goldbach Variation. Harrison dropped his coffee. The solution was perfect. More than perfect. It was brilliant. Whoever had written this had found an approach so innovative that Harrison couldn't immediately see how they'd thought of it. Within an hour, the classroom was filled with faculty members. Word spread through the mathematics department like wildfire. By noon, professors from Harvard, Princeton, and Stanford were calling to confirm what they were hearing. But Harrison had one burning question. Who had done this? Security footage showed only one person in the building after Harrison had left the previous evening: Marcus Williams, the night janitor. When Marcus arrived for his shift that evening, Professor Harrison was waiting for him. The classroom was still full of mathematicians, all staring at the board where Marcus had worked his magic. "Marcus," Harrison said gently, "we need to talk." The conversation that followed changed everything. Marcus explained his background, his abandoned doctorate, the circumstances that had led him to MIT's cleaning crew instead of its faculty. Harrison listened with growing amazement and regret. "You've been cleaning our boards for 7 years, Harrison said, "and we never thought to ask what you understood about what was written on them." The story broke internationally within days. "Janitor solves MIT's impossible problem" became a headline that captured the world's imagination. But for Marcus, the attention was overwhelming. He had spent 12 years being invisible, and suddenly everyone wanted to know his story. MIT immediately offered him a full faculty position. The $50,000 prize money was just the beginning. Book deals, speaking engagements, and academic honors followed. But Marcus made a decision that surprised everyone. "I want to finish my education first," Marcus told the assembled faculty. "The right way this time." MIT created a special program for him, a combination of coursework, research, and teaching that would allow him to complete his doctorate while sharing his unique perspective with students. Marcus became known not just for his mathematical brilliance, but for his humility and his understanding of what it meant to be overlooked. He kept working as a janitor for 6 months while he transitioned to student life. "This job taught me to see things others miss," he explained. "I'm not ready to give up that perspective yet." Marcus Williams went on to become one of MIT's most celebrated professors. His work on prime number theory revolutionized the field, but he never forgot the lesson of that Tuesday night. Genius can be found anywhere, in anyone, at any time. And in his office, the same building where he once mopped floors, Marcus kept a simple piece of chalk on his desk, a reminder that sometimes the most important discoveries happen not in lecture halls or research labs, but in the quiet moments when someone thinks nobody is watching. The janitor who solved the impossible had become the professor who never stopped looking for the overlooked genius in others.